All right, we are live. What is up? We're out of focus, unfortunately, though. Let's try that again. How's that? All right, I'm sure it'll figure itself out in a sec. We are live. Welcome, my brothers from another mother. This is a live broadcast. Part of my community is contributing on this one today. I've talked about my men's community a few times, and we had a private conversation a few weeks ago talking about divorce and some red flags and some things that we potentially do differently had we had access to a time machine sort of thing. So I kind of want to cover that on today's broadcast. It's going to be on lessons learned from the divorce machine in North America. Before we get started and kind of dive down this rabbit hole, I want to talk about the channel sponsor just for a quick moment. The Tactical Soap Company, of course. I've mentioned it quite a few times in the channel in the last few months. Scott's a great guy. We've got a couple of different products here. They're natural, infused with pheromones. They're, of course, very safe and healthy for you. Are they more expensive than regular soap? Yes, they are. But the link is below. You'll get a discount if you use my coupon code. We just had somebody that joined us and bounced on us. We might see some people join us kind of like part of the way through because we had a lot of people that were super interested in this, but we'll see where they go. So I'll start off by kind of doing a bit of an intro to my own story, and then I'm going to kind of pass it around the group of the other guys, and we'll take some questions towards the end. So just sit tight for that. But basically, the lessons that I learned, I mean, obviously I'm in Canada. You guys have watched my channel for a while. The Canadian divorce machine is pretty much the same throughout the country. When I was going through the actual process, there was a bill that was introduced in Parliament or a number of years prior that would have basically made everything even. There would be no assumed, guardianship by any parent. It would be shared parenting responsibilities, but that never got passed through. And that was one of the things that I learned kind of as I was going through this, that you got to kind of fight this entire process as you rip through it. We got a new join here. Keith, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Perfect. And you've been through the divorce machine, right? Like you're one of my brothers there?
Correct.
Perfect. Okay. I'm just going to have you sit tight for a minute while we do the intro, and then you can contribute as we go through. Thanks for joining us, man. So if I were to do anything differently, because that's kind of what this is about. Like I'm a big guy along the lines of paying attention to clues, like success leaves clues and so do failures sort of thing. So part of the reason why we're doing this is we're going to share these experiences. And some of the biggest takeaways that I kind of want to nail on before we get started and pass this around is one thing that I've learned from Sean T. Smith, the clinical psychologist that's been a regular contributor on the Red Man Group panel, is in his book, he mentioned it and he's talked about it at least once or twice during live broadcasts, that you really can't properly vet a woman unless you've known her for at least 16 to 24 months, roughly. I think his preference is around 16 to 18 months. So you've got to understand, like, you can't have any of these like shotgun weddings, overnighters, drive through Vegas sort of things. For you to get proper markers and understand her behavior and spot any kind of red flags so you can start picking some data points, you're going to need to be attentive for a couple of years. Ideally, there's a lot of people that will claim or suggest that you shouldn't live with somebody before you get married or anything like that. And I want to state quite clearly, actually, before I continue, guys, I do not encourage anybody to get married in the Western world. It's a very, very high risk proposition for men and low reward for men. But the opposite is true for women, where it's high reward and lower risk just because of the way family law is written, which you'll start to learn as we kind of go through this. But if you're hell bent on it, these are men sharing their own experiences and what happened to them. So the first point that I want to share is get some good data points. And that is going to require at least 1.5 to 2 years of being attentive to her behavior, looking for red flags, personality disorders, anything that might pop up, because women can be very, very good actors for a good long period of time. Some people think, the honeymoon phase ends about 3 to 6 months, and maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but women can act to get the desired outcome. I've done a lot of videos on my channel and shared a lot of my own personal experiences, a number of men that I've coached, the stuff that I've talked about privately in my own men's community. And you've got to understand that women have different phases of their lives. The phase in their 20s and their behavior, Their desires are going to be far different than when they hit their epiphany phase and they start moving to their 30s and even their 40s. And some of that stuff can even move around a little bit. Like if a woman got married very early on and she gets divorced in her late 30s and she's looking maybe for the alpha at that time, then that can flip around a little bit. So it's not going to be consistent. So again, first thing that I want to state is get some good data points if you're going to make any decision about settling down with a woman for at least a couple of years, because they can act for a certain period of time. That's not for me. That's from a clinical psychologist that spends more than 20 years of his life talking about this sort of stuff. Second thing, do not ignore red flags. I'm an entrepreneur. You guys know that. Title of the channel is Entrepreneurs and Cars. I don't think that's ever going to change because that was the origin and the creation of the channel. But you've got to understand that I think men are natural problem solvers. I know that I am myself. And it's like you will spot certain problem areas, certain red flags. And what you're going to try to do is you're going to try to fix those things. You think as a guy that you can, bust out your magic wand and wave it and she'll all of a sudden, do certain things that will comply and align with a conducive, strong, healthy sort of marriage. But if you're spotting red flags before you say I do, that is not going to get better. Those flags are not going to turn green after you say I do and you get married, right? You're basically, if you're with somebody that's throwing up all kinds of red flags, you're basically giving them a revolver and you're letting them hold it at you. And it's as simple as that. So you've got to be attentive to red flags and do not ignore them. Far too many men make the mistake of ignoring red flags before they get into a marriage, live-in situation, or choose to reproduce with a woman. And it is a bad idea. I coach a lot of dudes and guys that have been through the divorce machine, and they all spotted the red flags. And the common theme is they all ignored them because they thought that they could fix shit with some magic power that they have when they say I do. That just does not exist. I also want to talk about the myth of the lonely old man, because a lot of pressure comes on us as guys, like, when are you going to man up? In fact, I think it was, I'm not going to mention his name because I think he published it publicly here in the comments earlier on before we went live, but he just came back from in-laws funeral and the entire extended family was given the "we are waiting" thing. Like, when are you going to, wife her up sort of thing. So it doesn't matter what everybody else says. Fuck it. It does not matter what pressure comes from her family, the outside world, society, media, TV shows, your family, religion, whatever it is. And, the notion that you're going to die a lonely old man, we're all going to die alone by ourselves at some point. The idea that you're going to be sitting there holding hands, singing Kumbaya after being married for 60 years in the same bedroom and you die simultaneously overnight is utterly absurd. So everybody dies alone. So just understand that. So don't think that wifing somebody up is going to offer you some kind of like lifelong companionship or some extra level of achievement to unlock. I don't want to dominate the entire broadcast because there's some really, great guys on this right now that I want to kind of chime in as well. But Curtis, I want to start with you actually. What would you do differently now that you've, been through the divorce machine? I mean, you're in the States, so, it's a different set of divorce laws, but essentially in some states, it's really quite bad. I mean, a cockroach has more rights than a man in family court. But what would you do differently based on your own experience?
Dated for a long time. And not just her, dated multiple women. But for me, I was a late bloomer. Like growing up, I had acne. I didn't have girlfriends. I wasn't great with women. So once I got in my 20s and started to, it was the classic, hey, like the first girl who, would bang me. I had sex with other women, but it was the first one who was like consistent and hung around. So I just went full beta and just latched onto her and didn't want her to go. So absolutely would have dated for a lot longer, would have waited a lot longer to get married if I even would.
How long,
at that point.
How long did you wait before you pulled the ring out and got married?
Well, we actually dated for about 3 years. It was a long distance thing, about 3 hours away for quite a while, and then about an hour away. Well,
that kind of brings me to the next thing, which is, how were things before the I do and then after? Like, did they change much?
Well, so here's the thing. I enjoy women who have very large breasts, and I will sacrifice a little bit of everything else of the slim body for that. And that's what you had. I still like that. But with that, that was one of the red flags I should have noticed, because as soon as we got married, then the comfortable relationship weight just kept coming on and coming on and coming on to the point where, I wasn't even attracted to her anymore. So that was one that I completely ignored.
Okay. Would you ever get married again?
No, and any girl who asks me, I tell her that right away, and they stick around. So
Yeah,
I think they see it as a challenge or something.
yeah, like it doesn't seem to be a deal breaker. If you, like guys,
No.
I think that guys will capitulate, they'll yield, they'll go into the beta mind frame. They're not making themselves their own mental point of origin, and they'll kind of like just fall and be like, yeah, I think I'd like to get married someday. No, if you've become clear on things, you don't need to bend over backwards to capitulate and give her something that's going to get her to where she wants to go. She needs to be a complement to your life. Okay, she needs to add some value to it. It's not all about her. And I think far too many guys will make that concession if they've become clear in their mind that this is a bad idea and I don't want to do it, right?
And I think along with that is the stats are pretty out there. I mean, a lot of people know marriage is a raw deal for guys, and I bring that up a lot. And very, very recently, some of the women I've gone on dates with, they really don't have anything to say when I say that. There's no retort to that.
Yeah, well, there is
none.
none.
Stats are out there, and they know it's true. It's family court is a raw deal for guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's that documentary, Divorce Corp. It's certainly worth checking out. You can watch a ton of divorce proceedings on YouTube to see how men just. I mean, I just had one that got shared privately in another group a couple hours ago, and there was a guy that was in divorce court. He gave his wife like a $460,000 house. Couldn't afford to make the child support payments because of everything that flowed her way, and then he got thrown in the slammer because he couldn't make those payments. So it's like, what rights do you have as a man? It's very, very high risk if things don't go well, and it can be even worse if she wants to behave in a very bad way. Like there's no incentive to behave well through the course of the divorce proceedings. You didn't have any kids though, right, Curtis?
No kid. I got a fluky. No kids. No houses. Nothing in each other's name. It was just split the legal fees, and it was a clean break. And now she's a lesbian, so I have that power.
Jeremy, you've got some stories to share. You were married for a bit longer. What's your vision like now that hindsight's 2020? Like, what would you do differently?
Well, it was like the perfect storm of everything that we talk about. Single mom. I entered her frame. She's BPD. The whole. I've been through it all. I think if I would have maintained my frame to begin with, I think that it would have went a lot. I would have seen those red flags, and I probably did, but I just ignored them. Like you said,
Why do you think that you actually ignored them?
I think because I just thought that I could fix it. Yeah. I thought that I could, make her into what I wanted her to be. And
Where do you think you got that notion? Where do you think you got that notion that, you can make her into what you want to be? Because you're not the first guy that said that to me.
It's just the way that I think that's just the way that we're brought up, that we can, you come together and you make a family, and she comes your way and you go her way a little bit, and then just it's happily ever after.
Yeah. Did you guys have any more children? I mean, you kind of brought her into your world. She had kids already.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. And what changed that you can share with, like the before story, which, like the dating, the engagement, the up to the I do, and then after I do, like what changed after that?
It was all kind of a whirlwind kind of thing, because about 6 months into it, her youngest was 2, started calling me dad, and everybody's like, you're going to continue to date her. You need to step up and be a man. And, you can't string her along and all that. And then once we did get married, she immediately got pregnant. And then she was, you know, the BPD kicked in. You know, I'm never happy. It was never good enough. I wasn't home enough. I wasn't doing this. I wasn't doing that. You know, it was just, I constantly tried to please her for the whole time after that, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Whereabouts are you located roughly? You're in the States, right?
Yeah, Eastern United States.
Cool. What was your biggest lesson? I mean, if you could go back and provide this to yourself, if you had a time machine and you could go back, you know, to before you met her, what would you tell yourself?
To maintain, you know, don't compromise. Be, you know, you are who you are, and if you change to fit in or to how do you say, just make her happy, that there's gonna be resentment, and there's gonna be, you know, you need to take your time and vet women, and don't let anybody else tell you what to do. You know, it's too big of a risk to just jump in.
Yeah, it's a huge risk. One thing that Carl said from Black Label Logic, I think it was in a tweet, and he called it Betaization by 1,000 concessions. And I see this happen. And, you know, I see Curtis smiling there. And, you know, Jared, I'm sure you got a bit of a chuckle on your face because this will probably resonate. I'd love to hear your, you know, the feedback from both you guys on this. But essentially what that means is, you know, it starts with small things. You know, it starts with very small things. Like instead of the blue tablecloth, you get the pink tablecloth, and it's that flower arrangement, and then it's this, and then you have the honeymoon there instead of here, and then the you know, the engagement party is at this event, and it costs 5 times more than the other event, and then, you know, it continues on through the marriage where you end up spending more time with her family, doing things that serve her. You turn into a little bit of a plow horse. Maybe she convinces you to go vegan. And it's like, you know, these 1,000 small concessions that you make throughout the relationship. And I'm not saying that this is a function of marriage. I think this is a function of men and intersexual dynamics in general, where men over a longer period of time, if they're not maintaining the frame, if she's not entering your frame and a complement to your life rather than the focus, you can go from even a blue-pilled alpha to a red-pilled alpha. If you're not aware of it, slide all the way down the scale to a blue-pilled beta. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, guys. Jared, do you want to start?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're absolutely right. That, I mean, you know, I had one buddy who, you know, I pulled up in a minivan one day, and he's like, "Man, you're done." He's like, "You're done."
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
And it looks like you got a Hemi in that picture on your profile, right? So you moved from the minivan to something a little more fun.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You gotta, you know, once you break and go back into, you know, redefining yourself, you know, you gotta. That's what I was before, and you know.
Yeah.
That's what I am again. You gotta.
What about
betaified.
Yeah, you know, it happens. It's not the one thing. It's one thing after the other thing after the other thing, and it just piles up, right? Curtis, what about you? Do you have any stories to share there?
I'm seeing it with one of my really good friends. This guy was growing up just great with women, fantastic. But now, you know, I'll go out on the weekends here in Memphis and just tell him what I did. And now he's oh man, I wish, you know, I gotta get permission from girlfriend to do that. And a bunch of us are doing a trip out to visit him coming up here in a handful of months. And the only way to get us to do that was he's got to put her up in an Airbnb while we're there. And that was the only way to do it. And it's gone. I've just, you know, complete full circle where. Growing up, I was like, man, how did you know? You just thought it was magic. How does he do it? He's just great with women too. Now, you know, just like you said, I forgot how you framed it, how Black Label Logic did, but
yeah, it's called Betaization by 1,000 concessions. And like the more that I think about it, and the more note taking I do when I coach guys, I think it needs an entire dedicated talk on the subject because it's so profound and significant. Men don't realize it because it happens so slowly. It's like, you know, when you throw a frog in a pot and you boil it slowly, it doesn't know that it gets boiled and cooked sort of thing. I think it's the same thing with guys. If they're relaxed, they're not attentive, and they're not managing the frame and making themselves their own mental point of origin, right? Just want to give a quick shout out to those super chats that came in, by the way. It's Tony and Gabriel. Appreciate the contribution. That's cool. Thanks, guys.
That makes me think of one other thing that for me, this is a big I don't know, standard, or I won't do it. Not only not married, but any girl that I've talked to that, since red pilling, and where it could be, or I might want it to be a long-term thing, I still tell them I won't live with you.
Mm-hmm.
I will, we can have a house right next door to each other, but I will not live with you. And I think because Betaization by 1,000 concessions, like you said, we got to get the pink drapes, or I got to have my space. You got to have yours. And I think that is, as weird as some people might think it is, I think that is one way to really keep it at bay, and to really maintain your frame. And that pisses some women off.
I did a video on that subject. It's public on the channel. You guys can search it. I think if you search title "Entrepreneurs in Cars" plus "Should I Live with Her" or something along that lines, you get a lot more idea along the ideas of competition anxiety and how things relax when you kind of move it together. Like things just don't get better. I think a lot of guys think that, I locked one down. I'll give you a really, really good example. So a guy that I gave some tactical soap to, because I got some samples. I said, here, take these, it's free, use it. It's good stuff. It's infused with pheromones. A couple weeks later, he handed it back to me, and he goes, I don't need this. I just locked one down. Right. And I'm like, oh boy. It's like, where do you start in conversations with guys that think that just because they declare that they're in a relationship with a girl, or that they've got some exclusivity or some rights to her sexuality, that they can just, relax and, because they locked one down, right? It's like, it's everywhere. It's everywhere you look. It's really hard to ignore the fact that men think that just declaring that you're in a relationship with a woman, that everything will be tickety-boo and things will just take care of themselves, because that's what we've been told. We've been lied to by media, the Disney company, society. They all tell you just, man up, wife up, happy wife, happy life, and off you go. And there's a heck of a lot of guys that can tell you the exact opposite is true, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have kids, Jeremy, right? You said you guys, have a couple more kids. What's your custody arrangement like? Like, are you able to see them? How does that work for you right now?
Well, I just got it changed last month and signed off on it today, actually. Mm-hmm. You don't have any rights. She was allowed to take them and move 600 miles away, and I was having to go and when I could, that's a bit of a hindrance, obviously. Mm-hmm. But we just got it changed. They just moved back, and I'm able to see them every other weekend now. So and they're still about an hour away, but that's a heck of a lot better.
And than it was. What happened with the children that she brought into the marriage from the prior relationship? Like, do you have to pay child support for them, or?
I did. The one just turned 18, so I got out of that.
Okay.
Now, but I still pay an absorbent amount for my one.
Gotcha. Trenton, we just had you join us. You can unmute yourself. You've been through the divorce machine, right?
Yeah. Hey, how you guys doing?
Doing good.
Hey, yeah, I've actually been. That's good. That's good to hear. Thanks for having me on.
I'm gonna pose the same questions to you, because I know that some of you guys weren't able to make it on right at the start. So, what would you do differently now that your vision's 2020? They say hindsight's 2020. So, what would you do differently now that you've been through the divorce machine?
Yeah. So the divorce machine started early for me. When I was really young, I did not take responsibility for myself with sex, and I knocked up the wrong chick. So I was just trying to have fun, and got her pregnant, and I thought I'd do the right thing, and stick around.
How long
So
were
I
you
stuck
guys?
around.
Sorry, man. I was just going to ask, how long were you guys together before you knocked her up and wifed her up?
Probably about 6 months.
Wow. Okay. And what happened after the I do's? Like the before and after story. So there's always the before story, kind of like the engagement part, the honeymoon, the lovey-dovey stuff, the great sex, and then there's the I do and the after. So what changed before and after?
So it took a long time before I warmed up to actually doing the I do situation. I had a lot of pressure from her family and my family. And it took us a good, 5 years before we actually got engaged. So, but I thought it would improve, getting married, but really all it did, I keep telling my friends that are going to get married that I believe that marriage was what actually ended my relationship. I believe that there was nothing else for her to hunt and there was nothing else for me to do for her. And we thought that it would improve, and really all it did is just make things worse.
Is there any advantage that anybody can think of that's on the panel right now where a marriage would be of advantage to a man in today's Western world?
Well, even, like Rolla says, only get married if you're going to have kids, but still the entity of it is still not great for a man. It's good for kids as long as they stay together, and it's that dual household. But even that, I still don't think it's good for a man. It's so incredibly hard to maintain your frame and to maintain, being a man in an alpha status in that environment. That's my opinion.
What about you guys, Trenton and Jeremy? Do you think there's any scenario in which a marriage in today's Western world would be of any advantage to a guy?
I don't think so. I think that there's next to zero benefit. I really just don't see where a man would benefit from actually being in a marriage. I understand that you could have a single woman that's dedicated to you and you always have access to, but you can have that without marriage.
Right.
Right.
What about you, Jeremy? Do you have any thoughts on that?
If you're going to have children together, I mean, I don't really think that the court system is going to view it any differently. I mean, you're still going to have to pay child support. You're probably going to have to give her alimony, and you may not have to divide your assets. But if you get married young and you don't have anything, then I don't think it would make any difference.
I think if you're going to enter that risky proposition to have kids, I mean, I get it. Men are designed to scatter seeds, and I know that there's a good demographic of guys that try to vet women for long-term relationships and marriage for the purpose of reproduction. It's almost like they ask questions like, how do you identify wife stock? Like good wife stock sort of thing. Like it's almost like it's breeding rights sort of thing. But I think if you're going to get into that proposition where you're going to want to settle down, I say, but to have kids, it's like Curtis said, they're always going to do better if they have a mother and a father in their lives. It's like the stats just prove it. Children raised in single parent households do incredibly poorly versus children raised by two parent households. And I'm not talking about, like lesbian parents or gay parent households. I'm talking about opposite sex father mother households raising children together until they until they leave the house. There's some comments in the chat about Anthony Johnson's personal story with Medusa and how he put together a private marriage. But I don't know that a private marriage would even survive or be excluded from, like the fury of family law. I can't see any possible scenario where you could safely have children without the risk of what family law could potentially do to you and the access to your kids. It's like Jeremy said, when he got divorced, they moved 600 miles or an hour away. He's paying child support on table terms, whatever the government lays out. And like what most guys end up doing, and I'm not suggesting this is, the men on the panel right now, but what most guys end up doing is they end up throwing all their financial resources to their ex because they still get like 83% of custody orders, and they watch them alienate the children from the father. And it's sad, man, because it's the kids that suffer. probably the most at the end of the day, while the father suffers, you know, more immediately, while he doesn't have access to parent and be around his kids. I mean, there's no real downside to the mother. She's got a great deal, because when he takes him away for the every other weekend or Wednesday night dinner, you know, my family lawyer called this the screw the daddy over deal sort of thing. She's got the right to get dressed up and go out with her girlfriends and have fun, and then she sees the kids again on Monday, and she's got her child support payments, and everything's tickety-boo for her, sort of thing, right? I want to take some questions from the guys watching live. There's close to 500 people. By the way, guys, if you haven't already, smash the like button on the broadcast. Just lets YouTube know that you're getting some value out of the content, and you're enjoying it. But we're going to start taking some questions from you guys towards the end, and you can pose them to me or anybody on the panel that might be able to contribute and add on to it. I guess final words before we start taking questions, guys. What would you say to yourself? I think I posed this to the other guys, but not you just yet, Trenton. But what would you say to yourself if you could hop into a time machine and go back to a time before you met your ex-wife and have a talk with yourself? What would you say?
Probably the first thing that I would do is just date more. I would probably date a lot more. I think I settled. I had a tendency to find the first chick that would actually sleep with me, and then I would just stick with her for as long as as long as it worked out. But I think that I would probably date more for sure, so that I had a better understanding of what I was looking for, and then also make sure that I protect myself, because like you said, there's a lot that marriage can get you in trouble with in family law or from marriage law, but also even if you don't get married and you have children, there's a lot of, you don't have to be married to actually run through court and have a bunch of issues where you have to pay for child support and all of those restrictions and have the children taken away from you. So that really doesn't have much to do with marriage. So I would probably just avoid sleeping with the wrong woman and knocking her up for sure.
Yeah. Guessing that all you guys were pretty like blue pill betas before you got married, right?
No, I don't consider myself. I slipped into that rapidly. So, like you said.
And what about you, Curtis? Yeah. Were you like more of like a blue pill beta?
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely. And I think, you know, what Trenton and myself and what any guy who's gets into that I gotta lock her down mode, it's just a scarcity mentality. It's you just gotta date more and understand that there's plenty of women out there, and there's plenty of quality women out there, and you don't have to lock down a quality woman. I mean, you can get to a point where you're Aaron Clary, where he's just sick of dating, and he's just been in a long-term relationship because he's sick of dating. He doesn't want to go date and do all that stuff anymore. I love his story. You know, he's dated what, 200, 300 women, and he's had one for 10 years because she's great, and he doesn't want to date anymore.
Yeah, and he's got his life set up really well. Like I brought Aaron on for a Redman Group broadcast when we were talking about kind of like, you know, setting your own path in your life. And he's a guy that really lives and embodies that, because he's like, you know, if I want to go to Vegas and ride my bike, fuck it, that's what I'm going to do. And he doesn't have to listen to anything. I'm pretty sure he lives separately from his girlfriend too. But yeah, like, you know, the whole notion of, you know, again, I'm going to say the whole notion of subscribing to the societal norms that have been pounded down your throat through the function of the female-centric primary order that we live in, you don't need to do that. You need to make yourself your priority. You need to make yourself, as Rollo Tomasi says, your own mental point of origin. And anything that deviates from that in a long-term relationship with a woman, especially if you're considering marriage or having kids, is always, always, always going to lead to a path to trouble, because things do not get better when you get married. One of the things that guys constantly make a mistake on time and time and time again is they think, well, if I just, you know, wife her up and say I do and we live together, things will be fine, because, you know, maybe she says it, maybe your family says it, or whatever it is, or somebody convinces you of it, or you convince yourself. Things never get better after the marriage. I've never in one single scenario met anybody ever that has discovered that things got better after they said I do. It always gets worse. If you have problems before and you add a marriage and children to the mix, it doesn't get any better ever. Okay, let's take some questions. If you guys want to pop into the chat, I'll give you two options actually, because we got some space in this live broadcast. So I'm going to take the Hangout link and I'm going to post it in the chat, and we'll try this because I've never really done this before. So I'm just going to put join here in caps. If you click that, you can join us live and ask your question live, or you can just post it in the comments of the live broadcast. So I'll open it up to you guys, and we'll go for as long as we have questions coming in. I was kind of hoping to wrap this up in about an hour, so let's say in about another half an hour. Do you guys have anything else that you want to add before we start getting questions rolling?
Well, I just know there's, after I mentioned that thing about Aaron Clary, I know there's guys already saying, so I got to date 300 women before I can settle down with one. We're so binary when we think like that. And no, you do whatever you got to do. But I just like his story of, where he's just to the point where he's exhausted. He doesn't want to go out there anymore. And he's got the lifestyle that he can do that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just going to take this question from the chat. I saw somebody join live, but let me just grab this one here. He says, hey, Richard, any tips for 21-year-old Canadians who would like to have kids in mid to late 20s? Having kids is really something of importance to me. What should I look into a woman? You're way too young, dude. I did a video on my channel about dating tips in your 20s, so watch that first if you haven't seen it yet. Just search in the YouTube search bar, dating tips for men in their 20s, entrepreneurs in cars, and it'll come up. It'll be the first result. But, you need to figure out your own life, where you're going. You basically need to lay the foundation for where you're going to go in your life. You don't know shit right now. Most guys in their 20s subscribe to the blue pill notion of, I'd really like to have kids. It's something that's really important to me. You don't really know that it's really important to you until you discover who you are, until you've got the capacity to develop that part of your consciousness. So you want to hold that part off. And as far as the vetting process, Sean T. Smith, Tactical Guide to Women, grab a copy of that. You'll get a ton of value out of that. We lost our guy that joined us live. Ed bounced on us. So if you want to come back in, go ahead and do that. I'm just going to post that link again because I know it gets pushed up through time. Join us live.
I'd like to say, though, that anybody that's watching this that's 20 years old, I think that they're probably 95% ahead of anybody, in their age bracket.
Mm-hmm.
If they're already looking at this content and researching that's fantastic. Because I didn't have this, back before I got married, we didn't have.
Yeah, none of this existed. I mean, 20 years ago, none of this existed at all. I mean, it's such a huge resource, and I'm glad that guys are dealing with trauma, because that's usually what brings them to the red pill. That's usually what brings them to my channel, is they've had some trauma in their life. They don't know how to reconcile it. They go to Google, they go to YouTube, and they search for answers. And thank God something, comes up that enlightens them. I got another question here in the comments. Inverted Sagittarius says, my question is, how do you address red flags in a productive way? And do you confront the women directly and call them out? I'll pass it off to the panel before I jump on. Does anybody have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, you can't let it go. If you let it go, then what's that say about you? I mean,
yeah, it basically said, look, guys, you're going to get out of life what you tolerate. Okay, so if you're going to tolerate shitty female behavior, you're going to continuously get more of it. So if you find that there's more red flags than a Chinese Communist parade, which is what I like to say, you're going to keep getting more of that, and you're just going to ignore it. You're going to have to keep sitting there watching the parade march by, waving the fucking flags, dealing with that nonsense. And again, you're going to get out of life what you tolerate. So if you see too much of it, it's time to bounce. Like, you have to know when to cut your losses. Another really good book that I'm going to recommend that guys read, and it's on my recommended reading list. By the way, if you haven't, I don't know what the title of the video is. I'm going to try to put it out this way, but it's 7 books that all men should read. So just search for that on YouTube. One of them is Dangerous Personalities. The author's name is Joe Navarro. He was a speaker last year at the 21 convention. He was an ex-FBI profiler, and he basically identified the 4 dangerous personalities that and the way that we interpret it in the red pill community is that men would have to try to deal with or try to solve when they're in a long-term relationship with somebody that's got red flags. And it's things like narcissism, instability, psychopathy, so stuff like that. So you need to be attentive to serious red flags. A red flag because, I don't know, she works in a certain job or something like that that you're not fond of. that's not that big of a deal, right? But like serious things like she brings 8 cats to the relationship and she's narcissistic and unstable. You want a deep sixer like as fast as you can, right? Move on. Guys, the link is in the chat if you want to join us live and ask the question live on the broadcast to the panel. So help yourself to it. If not, I'm going to keep scrolling through these comments here.
And also on that, Rich.
Yeah.
I don't know what the stat, but I've heard it multiple times that, you know, by the time people are in their late 20s, definitely 30s, people change very little. Mm-hmm. So if you're getting a ton of red flags, you're going to keep getting that. And then if you do anything like long-term relationship, move in together, God forbid, get married, it's only going to amplify that. So whoever asks that, try to, you know, differentiate. Is it just, you know, a handful of shit tests that you're not passing, or is it, you know, is it true red flags?
Yeah, that's a very good
point. And if it is a bunch of red flags, then, you know, bounce.
Yeah,
have some
again,
fun
like
and bounce.
like the true red. Yeah, have some fun. You know, spin it as a plate, but that's it. But bounce. But again, you know, those true red flags are things like borderline personality disorder, psychopathy, instability, narcissism. Those are the brutal ones. Don, you hopped on live. Do you have a question?
No, man. Nice to meet you. First of all, I've been watching all your stuff, man. I just got introduced to it. I believe that I'm, you know, slowly starting to take my red pills, man. I was married as well for 10 years. Went through the divorce meat grinder here in Texas, bro, and just glad to be on. Glad to be talking to you guys.
All right. Well, let me ask you this question then. If you could hop into a time machine and go back to a time before you got married, what would you tell yourself?
I wouldn't have married a woman that was so much older than I was. I believe that I was 18 and she was 27. I think that I got married for all the wrong reasons. She was a single mother, like you continuously preach against. It was just for all the wrong reasons, man. I got into a lot of trouble, and I finally realized that it was.
Hold up a sec, Don. Hold up, Gary. I think your mic's on. If you can mute yourself, let me see if I can mute you. Actually, there. I think you're muted. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, and like I said, I was married for 10 years, man, and I just finally realized it was time to get divorced. Time to get divorced when I was standing here outside of a local mall here in Dallas, Texas, man, about to get arrested behind her because she had went in the bathroom and talked to her boyfriend on the phone and didn't like what he had told her. So she decided to come out of the bathroom and try to take it out on me and my mom and punched me in the face in the middle of the mall. I'm a concealed handgun licensed person, so I had a handgun on me. I got the cops called on me at the middle of the mall, and I almost got arrested and taken to jail because she punched me in the face.
Mm-hmm.
Never put my hands on her, never anything of that nature, and they wanted to arrest me and take me to jail. That's when I knew it was time to get divorced.
Let me ask you a question. Did you see any of those red flags before you got married and just ignored them?
Absolutely. And it's what the guy was talking about earlier is that us as men, I think, first of all, we like to believe that number one, we can fix everything.
Yep.
Number two, we can change everything.
Yep.
And number three, I think that we don't like to fail at things. I think that we like to believe that we can see things through to the end, to whereas women, they don't have the same nature as we have. They don't like to try to fix things. They want to give up on things immediately. It's like Patrice O'Neal. But I believe that Patrice O'Neal is the first guy that gave me my first few red pills. I love that guy. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Oh, yeah.
He's the guy that gave me my first red pills, man. And like I said, I believe that, you know, us as men, we like to think that we can fix things and we don't like to fail at anything. So we like to continue to try and try and try, even though we see that it's not getting any better.
Let me ask you a question, Don. Do you have any siblings?
I do. I have a ton of siblings. Yes, sir, I do.
Are you a firstborn or one of the older ones?
Yes, I'm the secondborn.
Yeah, it's pretty common for firstborns or, you know, the older siblings to try to take on that mentality where they think they can solve everything. All right, I'm gonna get you out of the panel because you've contributed. So thank you for that. I'm gonna let somebody else hop on.
Nice to meet you, man. Once again, very nice to meet you.
Thanks. All right, talk to you later. Peace. Who else we got here? We got William. Do you want to unmute yourself? Do you have something to ask or contribute?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Sweet. So I'm from Melbourne. I'm 17 years of age, starting my own company soon. My question is, I'm not sure how relevant it is for this panel. I mean, being 17, what should I do with women?
You should not get married to them right now. Is like the biggest thing. Like that's completely off the table at 17. Yeah. You're still forming yourself. Like I mean, you're still laying the groundwork for your life. So it should not even be a topic of conversation. You certainly want to make sure that you are in control of the birth. If you're dating women, if you're spinning plates, whatever it is that you're doing. I mean, wear a condom. For crying out loud, one of the biggest mistakes that guys will make, and not all of them will always admit it, but it's like, you fall for the, just go inside me, it's safe, or I've got an IUD or whatever. It's like, no, you need to be in full control of the birth at all times. So make sure that if you're out there dating, that you use a condom and you don't have any slip ups, because that can definitely change the path of your life. I think it was Trenton that was on before that was talking about that. So if you just came on now, you can kind of go back about 20 minutes, but you want to lay the groundwork for your life, man. It's what is the next chapter of your life going to look like, and how are you going to build that? If you're starting a business, then that's what your focus should be. It should not be on finding a wife or finding a girlfriend or anything like that. Like, where are you at with that right now?
Just casual dating here and there. And when I'm not dating, basically building the business. So 90% of my time is going into business related activities.
Well, you just said when you're not dating, you're building the business. And I would ask you to reframe that so that you become your own mental point of origin. And it's when I'm not working on the business, then I'm dating.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
And dude, understand that you're 17. You're only halfway to when you reach your peak sexual market value. So however good it is right now, it's only going to get better, man. Better. Especially once you get to your late 20s, you're making a grip of money. I mean, you should be. You're going to understand more about life. I mean, I'm 37, man, and it's awesome. Yeah. It's going to only get better for you, man.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to let you go unless you got any more questions, William.
No, I'm all good. Thanks for that, Richard.
Yeah, no problem. I'll just eject you, but thanks for chiming in. So, ciao. Okay, Gary, do you want to unmute yourself? Did you have a question or something to contribute?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say hi and thank you for a lot of the stuff that you've put out there. A lot of the content that you put out there has really been great, especially for me. So I'm over 44 years old. In the last couple of years, really changed my life around. Did well financially, but I was a workaholic. I was 260 pounds. So in the last year and a half or so, I got down to 100. I was 260 pounds now, 160 pounds. Got into the gym, got myself together, and I was with a girl for 3 years. She was a single mom with 3 kids. She did well financially, but as I started changing, she wasn't changing with me. Mm-hmm. And I really started to, she had a lot of red flags, a lot of things that were going on. And we just, I finally got the strength to kind of say, I'm going to go my own way. I'm not, it's been tough because of the kids and stuff like that. I was really attached to them. But there was one of your videos that really addressed that. And it helped me out a lot. That's just, you can't do anything about that. That's a loss. And I can't get back into that type of situation. So I wanted to get your advice or your thoughts on how, person like myself, 44 years old, how to...
Hold on a sec, Gary. Hold on. The rack, can you just mute yourself? Let me see if I can do it. Hang on. There we go. Sorry. Go ahead.
So I wanted to get your advice or your thoughts on person like myself, over 40, pretty well established business-wise, and I think I'm on the upswing at this point. What should I be looking for, and really what kind of approach I should take to dating women at my age?
Do you have any kids?
I do not. No.
So you don't want to get into an LTR with a single mom. It's just a no-go zone. You can date them, you can spin them as a plate, but don't get into an LTR with a single mom, because then you're going to deal with the exact same thing that you've redealt with before. And all the points that I've already brought up, it's like, things don't work out. You're going to have double, triple, quadruple the heartbreak, with the loss of those kids. And they're not going to add anything to the relationship. They're always going to drain you from it. I mean, there's no guy that I've ever talked to that's like, oh yeah, she brought some kids to the equation. It was awesome. It never, like, that conversation never happens. It's always, they were a pain in the ass. They did that. The other thing that, they told me that I wasn't their father. They kicked me in the shins. It's all just a nightmare. But now the argument that men make, and one thing that I like to say quite often is men are, masters of two things: complicating their lives and then justifying why they do it. And the way that men as they age complicate their lives is, well, as I get older, there's fewer available women without any children, so maybe I should just date them.
Yes, that's me exact to a T. Rich.
I did the same thing. I did the exact same thing after my divorce, right? So, I get it. I've got the T-shirt. I went through all the shit. But there are women out there that don't have kids, one. Two, I mean, if you do want to make the concession and date women with kids, you want to keep it to somebody that's got their shit together. They don't bring a ton of debt to the table. They don't have any personality disorders. Maybe the kids are older, grown up. They're a lot more independent. I mean, you can start thinking about concessions at that point. But I mean, you're sitting there telling me that you're 44. I'm 44 and I look way older than you. You should have no trouble dating women in their 20s.
Well, the thing is that women my age don't want to date me because they think I'm too young. They swear, and I'm like, I'm 45 years old. I'm like, what? Kidding?
So you have a good problem then. I mean, you're one of those guys that ages very gracefully. Why not just date childless women in their 20s and have some fun? I mean, if you're working on your purpose and your passion right now, focus on that. You don't want to go and rescue somebody else's, life, or, father's, somebody else's children, right? It's
for the thing is, I was dating a woman that made, she did well financially also. So it wasn't a financial thing, which also kind of, made me stay for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't make a lot of sense now that I look back on it, but it kind of eased that burden that I didn't have to think about, her taking my money or anything like that.
Well, that's the unusual side, right? Because she shows up to the, plate with kids, but doesn't have debt. For the vast majority of women that you'll find out there when you're dating, they usually have kids and they're broken. They've got all kinds of problems, right? And it's like, it's not unusual. And I've seen this, myself, it's not unusual that on the first or second date, they want to be bailed out of this, or there's a problem with their car, or they have this problem with their kids they're talking about. They have special needs. It's like, fuck all of that. Don't make your problems my problems. I got my own life that I got to lead. And the only way that you're going to focus on that and be effective with that is to pursue that passion. Does anybody else on the panel want to chime in on that question that Gary's got?
Thanks, Richard. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. I think it's a lot how you present yourself. On that first date, are you just going out for drinks, or are you taking her to a steak dinner? If you're taking her to a steak dinner that costs $150, you're sort of setting the tempo right there. But if you're going out for one drink for an hour and you're like, look, I got to go. You're cool. Let's do it again. You're setting a different standard, and it's your frame.
I've been prone to doing the whole. I mean, I live in New York City, so you go to the fancy restaurant. I don't drink, so
no, Gary. First date, 1 hour, coffee or a drink. That's it. Second date, take them to Central Park. Go for a hike.
I'm learning. Thanks.
They're going to show up. They're going to show up in yoga pants. You're going to get a good look of what they look like. You're going to go for a stroll, maybe grab something to eat as you're strolling through the park. You have a longer conversation. That's it. By that point, you guys will know if you dig each other's vibe, and it's, if it's worth getting together, coming over to somebody's place and going from there. But don't be throwing bucks deluxe at women on the first date. I mean, it's a sniff test. You're sniffing them out. They're sniffing you out. That's it.
All right. Lesson learned. Gonna approach it that way from now on. Thanks, guys.
All right, cool. I'm gonna move on to the other guys that joined on. So I'm gonna bounce you from the panel, but thanks for hopping on, brother. We've had who came on next? The Rack. If you want to unmute yourself, did you have a question or something to contribute?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Awesome. Good to meet you guys. So as you can tell, I'm a fairly young guy, and I'm not going to bore you with the whole story, but girl broke my heart, whatever. I got kind of on this path of self-development, which is how I ran into your channel, and Rolla Tomasi and so forth. Have you guys heard about RSD, or real social dynamics?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I'm trying to discover a lot of these things, and I've noticed a couple things, and I'm I'm trying to find out more about this, and I would like your input on it.
Yep.
So those RSD guys, they're really extreme into the hardcore hooking up with women, and who's to say that's wrong? I'm not going to say otherwise. And then I also see on the other side of the spectrum where you get guys that are married, divorced, and say, fuck women, I'm going to go my own way, the MGTOW way.
Mhm.
And I'm a firm believer in there's balance in everything. Where do you think that healthy balance is? Because right now my current line of thinking is maybe date for a long time until maybe 30, 35, where I'm more in my prime, and then I can choose from abundance. What do you guys think?
How old are you?
I am 24.
And whereabouts you live roughly? You don't have to tell me the exact city.
I don't live. I travel for my job.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, right there is a recipe for no girlfriend, no wife, nothing. I mean, you should be dating. That's it. As far as your question about the RSD guys, have you read any of Neil Strauss's books?
Yes, the game.
Okay, so if you'll remember in the game, Mystery, who was like the god of the pickup artist community, basically the foundation that all of these RSD factions and franchises are all built on, had his Katya, and his Katya broke his heart. And when his heart was broken, he was rendered entirely dysfunctional, and that's because he wasn't red-pilled. A red-pilled guy understands the sexual marketplace. He understands women. He understands his place and his value. And all the things that kind of come along with that. So while the RSC guys will teach you how to make 50 approaches over 3 days, and you have to follow this script, and I mean, basically a bonobo chimp could regurgitate any of those lines and at some point get somebody's number and possibly hook up. But it doesn't teach you how to deal with the stuff that comes after that. It doesn't teach you how to deal with a lot of the very important stuff that comes after that, which you read about in Strauss's book, and you saw how Mystery Method kind of fell apart. So that's my whole take on, the pickup artist community. It's like, okay, good. So you got laid, now what? Okay. If that's your only goal, cool, then just stay in that area. But if you're looking to kind of like explore a lot more than that, so you don't have to deal with the heartbreak that you dealt with that brought you to the red pill. Like I've said this before, it's usually trauma that drives men to the red pill. So the fact that you've kind of opened your mind to these ideas, there's a very deep and long rabbit hole to go down, and you're still a young man and you've got a lot of exploring to do. So that's where I would recommend you spend your time. Take it with a grain of salt with the RSD pickup stuff, but you've got a lot more to figure out for yourself. Because another really, really good book that I should mention, which I've talked about, I think maybe privately before on other broadcasts, is Robert Greene's The Art of Seduction.
Yes.
And one of the things he stated in that book that really stands out is, like he talks about all these seductresses. The sirens were the ones that stood out the most, and the sirens are basically the ones that guys fall for. It's like we fall under their spell. They're beautiful. It's a mythical creature basically from old, wooden ship, canvas sail Navy days, where the sailors would hear the siren, march off the boat and drown in the sea, sort of thing. And that's what these sirens are. Like, you fall under their spell. And that's often what most men get their hearts broken by, experience the trauma, then come to the red pill. So when you can't be seduced, when you can't fall for all that feminine stuff in your own mental point of origin, and you're running your own life, then that is a superpower that most guys can't unlock and never really unlock in their lives. There's very, very few men that actually do that. And there's guys that will resist that, I think anyway, and will go full hardcore MGTOW and do things like buy dolls or whatever. But if you're fully disconnecting from it, there's a lot more on the other side of that rabbit hole if you keep going, if you know what I'm saying.
Right. So where do you think is the healthy balance? Obviously, that's what I've been doing, is I've been dating, given my situation. But surely there's a balance, because I don't want to date my whole life, and I do think there's some kind of merit in getting married eventually.
Yeah, well, you don't have to worry about that until you're older. I mean, you've got a number of years. Like, I wouldn't even worry. Like, that should not even be a blip on your radar screen until you're like late 20s, 30 or so. You got lots of time for that, right? So it's like, how long ago did you experience this trauma that brought you the red pill?
3 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're just starting, right?
Yes. Thank you very much for your input.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm just going to bounce you from the call to make some space for other people, and we'll move on to the next one. Thanks, man.
Thank And one thing to bring up, RSD, they are an amazing marketing machine. They make it look so good, and that's what guys that watch them need to understand. It's not going to be like that when you go out. They make it look very simple. You get 100% kiss close, phone close. It's just not like that, and they have to do that. They're selling a product.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very, very good point, Curtis. Who do we have join on here? That's Gerald. Did you have a question or something to contribute?
Yeah. Hey, Rich. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good, bro.
All right, good. So New Jersey, in the States, found your channel about 1.5 years ago, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
And here's I got a couple of things I want to run by you. So I'm 50. I was married 20 years, divorced 5 years ago. Came out of it pretty decent. One of the few men I've met, heard, even online, that actually received alimony out of the marriage. 2 kids, 24 and 21. Son's graduated, doing well, on to his life. My daughter's in school now. My percentage of her costs. So from a co-parenting perspective on that end, the kids were already older, grown, doing their thing, moving on. And that's pretty good. Now what I find myself is having a little bit of trouble in my rebuilding process, right? So rebuilding myself, for me, my business, my purpose, motivation. Before I got divorced, everything that I was kind of building, and I did pretty well, right? Over 200K a year. But when the family broke down, the marriage, went sour. It went sour many years prior, but we held on to it way too long. I'm single, 50, don't have a problem dating, that's all good. But the issue is I'm not as driven. And I think part of that is because I'm 50, right? Not the same energy I had when I was 35. But how do you, as a business person with a lot of knowledge, skills, take that and just over again? I'm in real estate, which is good, but the motivation isn't there anymore. I was in tech before, now in real estate.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out where that balance is, and I feel like I'm on a hamster, right?
Okay, so let me ask you this question, just to clarify. Why do you think that you're not as motivated?
I think part of it is me for so long. It wasn't necessarily for me. My needs were behind everyone else's. So now that isn't the case anymore, I'm having a little trouble keeping that consistent for it to just be about me.
It's starting to pop up in the comments, and this is what I was thinking. But have you had your labs done to check your blood levels for hormone imbalances, endocrine system, testosterone, stuff like that?
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually doing a lot of research around that when I found your channel. I have not had it tested, but now I think I probably should.
Yeah, it's a it's been a game changer for me. To be honest with you.
Me too.
Yeah, and Curtis too as well. I'm 45, and I can tell Curtis, your body composition since I've seen you the first time on one of these live panels when we did the private broadcasts on Patreon. Like, your body composition has changed completely, and your mental focus and clarity and your chill levels very, very good too. But as guys get older, like when you start to approach your 40s, your testosterone level is dropping anyway as you get older. So it drops by about 1% per year after the age of 30. And it's so slow and slight, you hardly notice it. I really noticed something changing in my life just because of all the stress that I had gone through in the last 3 or 4 years. That kind of led me to the creation of the content that I put out now, the stuff that I do, and the coaching of the men and all that sort of thing. Right. When I got my blood labs tested, they weren't bad, but I knew that I wasn't optimized. I wasn't sleeping properly. I wasn't strong in the gym. Sometimes I'd even go to the gym and it's I would do these bullshit workouts where I just go and be I got no motivation. I just do caps for 15 minutes and leave. Whereas, 4 years prior, when everything was functioning awesome and I was completely focused, there was no brain fog. I was hammering my business. I'd go into the gym and I'd throw 3 plates on and bench press it, sort of thing. So, you might want to get your labs checked and consider going on TRT. One thing that I've noticed is when you do, your level of focus improves, your strength improves, sexual function improves, sleep improves. diet improves, your body composition improves, your body fat goes down, your muscle density goes up, heart function improves, bone density improves. Most guys, and I'll just put it out this way, do better, make more money, and are more successful once they balance out their endocrine system to something that works for them.
Okay, so I did find a product and a company that I've joined and am using their product, and it seems to be working pretty good, but it's not getting me to say the results, but it's not as strong and as immediate turnaround.
Are you using a gel?
It's a gel, yeah.
Yeah, the gel shit, for the most part. Did you get your blood labs pulled?
No, I didn't get labs pulled yet.
Yeah, like you can't really treat it until you get your labs pulled, and then you want to do it with doctor supervision. So you want to find a clinic that can kind of run you through this, that specializes in managing endocrine systems for people as they get older.
Right. Endocrinologist.
Yeah. Or there's even like doctors that aren't endocrinologists that will specialize in this area. Like the doctor that I use, he's not an endocrinologist, so he can't prescribe certain things, and he doesn't get into things like HGH and stuff like that. He just does testosterone, HCG, like the basics. But he'll look at everything. So DHEA levels, vitamin D. Like one thing that I was really, really low on, because I live in Toronto, and basically anybody that lives north of the tropics. Where do you live, man?
New Jersey.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, like you're fairly far north. You're a black man. So vitamin D is something that's really important, right? And my vitamin D was super low, and I was taking like 8,000 IUs of vitamin D, and even that was enough. We bumped it up to 10,000. That wasn't enough. I'm on 12,000 now, so I take vitamin D drops every day.
Wow.
And like stuff like that. So it's not just the testosterone levels, but it's things like the cholesterol, estradiols, DHEA. Vitamin D is really important, man. So you want to kind of maybe spend some time in that area, because if you found yourself super focused and motivated in the past, and I can relate, because in my 30s, I was just killing it in life, man. Like I built a great business. It was doing multi-million dollars a year. I had 23 employees. Like when you start to slow down and you feel the lack of drive and energy, there's something missing. And when you say you're 50, but you haven't taken a look at that yet, that's where I would go.
Okay, that makes sense. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm going to bounce you, and let's see if there's any more questions, because I wanted to run this for about an hour, but thanks for hopping on, Joe.
All right. Take care.
Yeah, man. Do you guys have any thing to top up on? I know we got, Jeremy, Trenton, and Curtis on, but do you guys want to chime in on any of that stuff or offer any tips?
I just think Gerald needs to, he's been taking care of everyone for a long time, and take this for how you want, Gerald. I'm 37, you're 50, but I think you need a little bit of selfish gene. Go take a trip, man. Go take a trip to the Caribbean by yourself, do whatever you want, and then come back, man. You'll be renewed, maybe have that purpose that you were looking for. I think you got to do that.
Yep. I'm just kind of going through the comments here, because some of them rolled in while we took some new people. And let's see what we got. There's somebody that's asking about conservative women and marriage. Let me see if I can find that one. No. All right. 50. No. Okay. All right. We'll get into that stuff. It might have passed. Here's one. What kind of women are suitable for red pill men to marry? I mean, if you want to get married, again, high risk, low reward for men in the Western world. And you only want to do it if you're going to father children, and you intend to have them in your life for the next 20 years, basically. I think, and I'd love to hear the panel chime on in this too, because I know you guys are all member of the private community. You are part of the idea exchange. I'd say the kind of woman that is going to enter your frame. She's not going to be the focus of your life. She's not going to, try to turn you into a little pet, aka plow horse. I mean, if she tries to turn you into a pet now, you're going to end up turning into a plow horse when you're married. So what that looks like is, if you're like her accessory, her plus one that she wants to take you to places and kind of showcase you, and it's like you're this guy that kind of sits there and you talk about stuff, but you don't really like there's not much in it for you, sort of thing. You don't want to turn into that pet, because pets turn into plow horses when they get married. So that's really important too. So, it's spoken about a lot in the manosphere, but, non-tattooed conservative women that don't have a high lay count, it's as simple as that. One of the things that has come up time and time again is Studies have shown that if you marry somebody that lost their virginity earlier on in life and has a high lay count, the chance of that marriage surviving is very, very low. For example, you get woman one, she lost her virginity at 15, woman two is 22. Woman one's got a high double digit or even triple digit lay count, bad news. Woman one, 22, her lay count's smaller than, you can count it on 2 hands and a foot maybe, or 2 hands is even better. That's a better prospect. So that's something that we don't talk about too much, but it's worth mentioning. I want to toss it over to you guys because I don't want to dominate this, but do you have any thoughts on that? What kind of women are suitable for red pill men to marry?
Well, if those guys aren't going to chime in, you nailed it for what she needs to be. Enter your frame, no tattoos, low lay count. But that's just the start. You have to really be able to assess yourself and say, will I be able to hold the frame for this long term? That's I think is even finding the girl is a small piece, but can you hold the frame for that long term amount of time? And that's why for me,
that's really important. That's really
I know
important.
if I move in, it's going to be harder, and that's why I'm adamant about not moving in together. That's just me, but I think just knowing how you get in relationships, and I think the more you date, you're able to prolong that process of being able to hold your frame the more you date. So it's just really of just being honest with yourself and saying, can I do this? Will I be able to hold this frame long term?
I'm going to second that, and I'm glad that you brought that up, and I'm really glad that you're on the panel tonight, Curtis, because that's a really important point. Is all of that shit that I said before matters, but it matters just as much, like Curtis said, that you are in fact truly red pilled. You can hold the frame, and you know yourself. Like Curtis said, like he knows that if he has, if he lives with a girl, then he's going to relax his frame, and he's going to start screwing up. So he makes that a non-negotiable. That's a really, really good point. Anything from you, Trenton or Jeremy, on that question?
You got to look at guys like Rolo that have been successful. I can't really speak to that because I failed, obviously. And, just do your research and learn from others' mistakes. See what's been successful and what hasn't been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got anything on top of that, Trenton?
Yeah, I think you guys mostly nailed it. Experience, first of all. I think just having more experience, you learn a lot about yourself, and you learn a lot about women. Again, the more time you spend with a woman, you start to relax. If you can, you hold that frame. I really agree with that. I know that I was in my marriage. As time went on, I could feel myself just becoming that more beta, do more for her kind of attitude to try to fix that, fix any issues we have in the relationship. So I really think that you have to be confident in knowing who you are and being able to, like you said, maintain frame. And long term, you have to be able to hold it. That's
great point. Yeah, thanks, Trenton. And I just want to shout out to the guys throwing these big super chats out. Fitzroy says, great content. Appreciate your work helping me increase the red pill wisdom. Great. Continue to be great. And there's another one, Gary. Thanks again on the panel for all your content. Much appreciated. You're changing men's lives for the better. Thanks, guys. It's my pleasure to serve you guys and offer what, like, I've fucked up a lot in life, man. I've learned a lot of lessons from my own mistakes. I've talked to hundreds of guys now on stuff that they're dealing with, whether it's going through divorce, trying to get custody of their kids. I had a call earlier today, actually. It was really interesting when a guy was trying to vet a woman for marriage, and she was the daughter of an A-list actor. If I mentioned the name, you'd all know. And that was another very interesting, conversation. But I really enjoy what I do, and I'm going to continue to do this. And I want to thank, the guys that have joined us on the panel. I mean, these are all men that have taken time out of their night. They're guys that are members of my private men's community. If you guys haven't considered joining, the website is up now. It's entrepreneursincars.com/community. And you can enter the private Facebook community. You can get into conversations and discussions similar to this, whether it's got to do with women, money, business, creation of wealth, whatever it might be, self-care. It's there for you. So I just want to start to wind it down on that note. Thank you guys for the contributions. Curtis, Jeremy, Trenton, thank you very much, man. We'll wrap up the broadcast on that note. There's a Red Man group this Saturday, by the way, which I'm hosting. It's going to be on why men date single mothers. And we've got a great panel lined up for that. Should be a good conversation. We're launching at 10 a.m. And there is on my channel, if you're on a laptop or a computer, the Red Man Group YouTube channel. If you can please subscribe to it. We want to start doing the broadcast from there as soon as we have enough subscribers that YouTube will let us do from there. But on my channel, Saturday, 10 a.m., we'll be broadcasting a Red Man Group live. It'll be a great panel. So we hope to see you guys there. We'll see you guys later. Peace out.